Hey guys, it's Jonathan McCormack. I'm an attachment specialist in New York. You can find me at attachmenthealinghelp.com. And I'd like to start a series, perhaps in 5 parts. And this will be all about attachment and how it's healed. This will be mainly based on Leslie Becker-Phelps' book, Insecure in Love. Pretty decent text. She goes through it and she kind of says the bedrock of what attachment is. And then goes through some scenarios, emotional awareness, and her solution at the end is basically a self-compassion, you know, but an awareness, a kind of a getting in touch with that deep source of compassion, which we must have for ourselves, and also with kind of an embodied emotional awareness. She doesn't say that. She says her solution is self-awareness and a positive relationship to yourself create a powerful force, a combination I call compassionate self-awareness. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, so this first part will just be about the bedrock of all relations. Essentially, the way you bonded as a kid is the way you're going to bond as an adult. Children seek love from their parents like their lives depended on it. Because it does. It does actually depend upon it. And that used to happen all the time. If you read a lot of ancient literature, food ran out. And they would have to kick away some of the youngest. And that was just a reality. What is irrational is adults experiencing the same intense anxiety, the same painful sadness when the existence of their relationships feels threatened. Not only that, but they're saying adults and children, when they're children, these same people, they're kind of anxiously attached. Not only do they get upset very easily, they don't get comforted very easily. So it's especially tough. These kids have trouble being soothed by their parents, and they're unable to find kind of a reliable sense of soothing. Because of that, they're unable to find a reliable sense of soothing in their romantic relationships. Basically, we have an attachment system. You can flip it on or off. When it's on, you're trying to make connection. And when it's off, you're closed. Ideally, when you get upset, you get dysregulated, you go and seek out an attachment figure, a primary figure, a lover, a parent, a friend, And then once you find that figure reliable, available, responsive, your attachment system shuts off. Like, oh, okay, I got it. We have this connection. This connection's safe. It's pretty stable. I can rely on it. But what if you never feel that way? What if it never shuts off? That's kind of what an anxious attachment person is dealing with. It's always on. How's the relationship? How's the relationship? How's the relationship? How's the relationship? Constant. And you'll never feel calm or comforted. That's kind of just your default way of relating to people. The working model we have in ourselves, this is why it's so important. One of the works is like healing the inner child or reparenting, dealing parts work, however you want to say it. But basically, you're giving this figure, the working model of yourself is your sense of how worthy or unworthy you feel of being loved. And if you constantly give yourself compassion, you'll feel like you're pretty worthy of being loved because you're doing it. Your mind's like, oh, I must be doing it. If you don't feel that way, you just give yourself that compassion, that curiosity, heal that inner child. That's one way to do it. And if your mind's constantly doing it, it's like, oh, that must be real. You're putting all this effort into it, and then eventually, and this takes months, a year, 2 years, you have a new working model, So when you feel unworthy of love, you also fear being rejected and struggle with attachment-related anxiety. This sense of unworthiness, it's like a homing device. And it's always stuck on. You're constantly searching for reassurance. And you're constantly on the lookout, scanning for rejection, fear of rejection. Hey, what did he say? But I texted them. They didn't text back in 30 seconds. I will never love, and I'm not a human being. You just go right to it, just boom. Avoidance on the other side, their attachment. Homing device is stuck in the off position. If you're anxious, usually you overreact to problems and you underestimate how much resilience you truly have. People with attachment, anxiety attachment, they get through some tough things and they don't acknowledge it, that compassion. So they'll dismiss it. You're like, well, you survived this, you survived that, you're doing pretty damn good. No. And if this happens, I'm dead. I can't handle it. No, you have a reservoir of true resilience, inside. But it's about connecting to it. That's to do with mentalization. We'll get to that. Oftentimes, they'll even heighten their need. If they're having trouble, they can be drama queens, is basically what I'm saying, constantly crying out, basically. And of course, their partners get overwhelmed, exhausted at this. Here's the thing an anxious attachment person can't stand. If you're like this, you can being misunderstood. If you have an hour-long conversation with someone, you know how often you're going to be misunderstood? Like, if you're talking to my family, like 99% of the time. But regardless, you're going to be misunderstood. That's just how it is. No big deal, and you can even explain, like, well, this is what I meant there. And you still might not understand. Well, I just don't get that, guys. But that's okay, though. What's the problem? No. They need to be understood. And when, because it's going to happen, their partners misunderstand them or are unavailable or don't respond, that's when it kicks in. That's an alarm, And then how do you see your partner? Think about this. Now you see your partner as unloving. That's how it feels, though. I know. So an expert, but you are never there for me. Oh, never. You called me here. I was there for you. You called me. Okay. What they're talking about is like maybe once or twice, which is panic. But to them, that feels like you are never there. I can never rely on you. Oh boy, you're going to have a pretty low opinion of that person while desperately doing whatever you can during their love. They can often see their partners as unfaithful, anxious types, getting very jealous, And the real problem is that not only that, they're activated, but they can't calm down. They can't get that comfort from their partners. So they just stay activated. And you're not rational when you're activated. None of us are. So they can't come down to then forgive their partners. If they were wrong, let's say they actually were, and the partner and owns up to it, can you forgive? No, because you're still, and the person may be like, I'm sorry, but you're still so upset. And that person can say, I'm sorry 100 times, but you're still upset. In general, when it comes to sex, people in anxious attachment, they enjoy being held and caressed. Usually use actual physical sex to get assurance and acceptance. That's not where they get the real love and tenderness, though. On the other side, it's the dismissing, and that person has no need for love. They have deactivated. They're turned off. And if you notice, a lot of these guys, they'll denigrate their partners, Like, they'll be pretty insulting sometimes. Why? Because it prevents them from allowing people to get close to them. A lot of avoidance are very sarcastic. That pushes people away, They always are on the lookout for negatives. Negatives. They're always seeing the negative in the other person. The anxious avoidant, I mean, good Lord, that's like, it's explosive. But one of the reasons it's so tough is you have the avoidant getting triggered and so denigrating the partner, and then the anxious person feeling pretty bad, and then getting more like, oh, that's just confirming that he doesn't love me. Like, it's so toxic. You just push each other's buttons. Dismissing people generally are unaware of their emotions, so they're really not emotionally equipped to deal with them. They just numb them. If you notice, like avoidance, they never admit they're angry. Like you talk to them, like, well, your partner, the guy did this, the girl did that. Yeah, but it's no big deal. I mean, that's fine. I understand. That anger is always lurking. That anger is ready to come out. And the fact that you dismiss it, that's proof that there's something wrong with feeling it. And if you're feeling that anger as an avoidant, you also don't forgive. You ever notice that? Like, you deny you're angry. Oh, you did that? No, that's fine. No, it's totally fine. No, I forgive you. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, the guy's got the crazy eyes. I really forgive you. It's like, oof. Like, there's so much repressed down there. You can feel it. And you can even bring it out to them. Like, boy, you really seem angry. Really tense. And they'll deny me. No anger. Never. Now, because any physical contact can weaken the defenses of an avoidant. Oftentimes, they're very uncomfortable with touch. Hugs, being caressed. This is indeed a fairly hellish state to be in, when the very economy of love, touch, is felt as a threat. So, the sex they can do, but it has nothing to do with the relationship, So, a lot of times they just have one-night stands, or just go complete monk mode, that's it. Or, usually get into the relationship at first, and the avoidants are great, and there's a lot of intimacy, but then at a certain point, they become disengaged. And the anxious person is like, I am unworthy of love. I must be ugly, And that, and of course he or she wants, and that even draws her further away. So as the anxious dismissive, this is the fearful attachment. And the fearful attachment is really conflicted in love. He or she sees themselves as flawed, needy, helpless, unworthy of love, and also feels, this is a little paranoid, but also feels like there's something wrong with them. They don't know what it is, but everyone else does. Can you imagine walking out your house? This is like the mark of Cain, or something, and everyone doesn't like you. Everyone has a problem with you, and you don't know why. And you wish, if you just knew why, you would change it. You would change it. Of course, I would change it. And so everything is going to be real tense, and because of that, they're going to keep others at a distance. So this person would love this. It's not like a dismissive. Like, I'm fine alone. I'm totally fine, until they get like drunk. A lot of like anxious girls or anxious guys, they'll ask me like, I was with my partner. Boy, it wasn't going good, but he or she called me drunk, and he was like, I love you. The guy wrote me a poem. This, the other thing. That will stop as soon as he stops drinking. That was one time. That was because he was drunk. That's it. That'll never happen again. Not when he's sober. That's an avoidant. I hate to be that harsh, but that's how it is. Unless he's going to work on himself. But no. A lot of these guys, they can only be emotive, only aware of their emotions when they're drunk or high, whatnot. So this person really does want a relationship, but he avoids getting close out of the fear that they'll be rejected and misunderstood. That's like the number one thing. No one understands me. No one understands. And I talked to this person and that person. They didn't get me, and they didn't know what was happening. This person's utterly alienated. We share a humanity. I don't care who you are. You could be some guy in the middle of Moldova. You share something with me, but to a fearful avoidant, there's not enough shared humanity. He feels too alienated to make a connection. So at the same time, and this is deadly, you have a conflict. You have the intense fear of rejection and then a desperate need for reassurance and closeness. You're always trying to get your partner's approval and attention, oftentimes exaggerating your distress. These are like the real drama queens, you know. Everything is emergency. What you're really doing is crying out for a connection. That's not what they see. They see like, you know, oh, this is, you know. They don't see the distress. And then when the partner starts getting close, they feel so vulnerable to getting hurt. They instinctively protect themselves. This happens all the time. So, like, there'll be a couple, anxious avoidant, a fearful avoidant, and the anxious person will finally say, I'm done. I'm done with this, and just leave. As soon as that person leaves, boop, that attachment turns on. The fearful avoidant, all of a sudden, they love the person. And all of a sudden, the sun rises and sets with that person. And they're quoting Pablo Neruda, and they've got leaves of grass out. And then she comes back, or he comes back, and then boom, it's like, okay, it's off. and that'll drive people insane. You know, even if you're very relatively securely attached, if you get into a relationship with a fearful avoidant, you won't be. In a few months, it's such a head fuck, it's such a head trip that it will kind of flip you out. So there's a constant, but also just to feel bad for them, there's that tension between too close and too distant. So you're constantly trying to navigate that. Move it, no closer now. Oh, now they're gone. Now, okay, but look, you're constant, and nothing feels right. Because of that, they also view their partners pretty negatively. And because of that, they have trouble empathizing with them. That's a big part of attachment repair. You'll see is mentalizing. It has to do with how you're perceiving other people thinking, like getting in their heads, but also just being in touch with your own emotions and how you're thinking. And fearful avoidants have a terrible time doing that. Because of that, these are the guys that stew in their feelings. You know, like just resentment is huge with fearful avoidants. They're very resentful because they feel like something wrong has been done in the relationship. You know? And it's funny, fearful avoidants, what people don't understand is that they'll end relationships even if they're in love, because the pain is too much. A dismissive wouldn't feel that he was in love, or she, a dismissive would just be like, no, cut it off. Maybe a couple months later, those emotions get processed. But dismissive, when there's no feeling, there's nothing, it's numb. Fearful, this will be very, fearful will be very emotionally wrecked on this. And also, fearful avoidants usually have a lot of trouble with physical intimacy, a lot of, I guess they call it like sexual anorexia, you know. But so, what the hell? Why do we need an attachment figure? Like, what is one? It serves three functions. Okay, your dad, whoever it is. People will strive for proximity to keep that person close. That person will be a safe haven. When you feel threatened, you look for protection, comfort, and support. That's your safe haven. And I do the ideal parent figure protocol where we go back in childhood, get into meditation kind of, and I bring in the ideal parents, and we give those things. You're seen and known, you're delighted in, you're comforted, feel how protected you feel, a felt sense. Because attachment, this is a big thing you'll see, have to get in touch with their emotions. I'll give you some meditations for that, but in the next video. And it's a secure base, your attachment figure, thirdly. Because you feel safe and supported when you're around them. You'll feel free to go pursue your goals. You'll go explore. One of the ideal parent figure meditations, one of the big ones is play. And it's amazing. I mean, it takes a minute. But so the person will be like, yeah, I haven't left my house. I have like no friends. I don't do anything. I'll start working with them. And I'm telling you, like in 4 months, you know, they're doing this meditation of play. And their parents are just supporting them. And they're going out and exploring. We've seen kids on the playground, you know, they get dysregulated, run to mom, just touch her. And then they get nice and relaxed. shoot back out. That's what you should have internally, you know. So unfortunately, to enjoy a secure and happy relationship, you actually have to face your fears of being unlovable and rejected. So you have to acknowledge it, right? To understand them. Like, okay, this is why. 3, someone, probably gonna be you, has to nurture a new sense of having a safe haven in your adult relationships. That could be an attachment figure, yeah, like a husband or wife. It could be a priest. It could be a therapist. It could be a good friend. But also it could be God. She writes in this book a lot, Leslie, Becker-Phelps, in Secure in Love. You know, like, boy, it could even be God. Like, which is, you know, that's a good option for a lot of us, you know. And you need to make that relationship with yourself, you know, treating yourself well. And there's some meditations for that. You know, people's preoccupied attachments, they keep people close by ignoring their own needs, and then usually they get very resentful. You know, I'm doing all this. I've been sacrificing everything. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I always do what you want to do. At the end of the day, I still feel anxious. I don't feel safe. And they get very upset. Why aren't you giving me what I need? Why aren't you And then the other person, if it's a man, is like, oh, I can't give the love that she needs. And you feel absolutely crushed, you know. It's ugly on both sides. And by the way, that search for approval, you will forever be performing. Forever. Even in your 80s, you'll be doing a little dance for people. Well, if you're doing that, you'll never feel accepted. Why? Because if someone loves you, you'll be like, yeah, they love because because I'm great in bed, because I make a lot of money, because I'm so good. I'm talking about myself, obviously. Or whatever it is. I'm a CEO superstar. I've heard so many women be like, yeah, he likes me because I'm hot, you know, because they're basing their worth on their performance. So even if he absolutely loves you, it's not going to feel that way because you never showed your authentic self. You were always doing what he wanted, always catering to him or her, whatever. I'm sorry, it's just the avoidant and the anxious in my mind, which is not true. For some reason, like, anxious is like women, and avoidant is men, which isn't true. That's just how my brain. It's like just in my mind, all cats are girls, and all dogs are boys. And I've told my mind that this is wildly improbable. But that's just how my mind's like. But it associates cats with women and dogs. But I don't know why. That's just how I associate it. It just sticks in my head that way. But the truth is, I just want people to know, plenty of female avoidance, plenty of male anxiously attached. It's not one or the other at all. That's just my culturally using those gender terms. So, but because of that, as I was saying, you never show yourself. So you'll never believe you're loved for yourself. And in fact, you'll never know. You know, usually a dismissing person, when they're upset, they appear very unbothered. You know, you see these guys, they're just like, yeah, you know, this happened, that happened, you know, maybe he or she's yelling at you, and you're just like, you know, completely fine. Underneath that is intense anxiety for being rejected. And dismissing avoidance, they lose out on 2 fronts because they're unable to act on their desire for connection. And they're never truly free or capable of feeling close to another human being. So they do have, I mean, what would you do? What would you do if you had this intense yearning, but you can never satisfy it? But maybe you can, and you start thinking, perhaps, and then you try, no, you get zapped. That tension often is the shutdown, causes the shutdown. That tension is where the body's like, okay, this is irreconcilable. Boom, just shut down. It's a good defense mechanism. What else are you going to do? Just feel the pain of longing for years and years? The fearful person, fearful avoidant, disorganized, whatever, is lost in relationships. They experience, because as children, oftentimes they experience the caregiver as scary. They were scared. Perhaps the mother or father was just very hyper, very bipolar, I don't know, but just that energy scared the child. So the thing you want most is the thing that actually scares you. Not because it's going to reject you, but it's literally frightening. Frightening. So how are you supposed to get your attachment needs? I need this thing, but it terrifies me. So they don't find much comfort at all, ever. They don't find solace in deactivating. I'm just going to do it alone. They don't hyperactivate and say, you know what, I'm just going to be super needy until I get something. They use both. So, when I said disorganized, it's very disorganized. It's not like this or that. It's just all over the place. And it's a whirlwind, The problem is, when these kids when you're a baby and you feel frightened, all dangers equally trigger a desperate search for a safe attachment figure. No matter what the day, you're a baby. You don't know what's really dangerous. You have no idea. So everything's like alarm. And that actually stays with these people until they're adults. Jacques Panksepp, he calls that primal panic. This primal. And that's why these attachment problems are so painful. Yeah, I mean, people don't realize how painful it is. Heartache is one of the worst pains in the world. I have a protocol, actually, that usually helps people in 2 or 3 sessions. If anyone look it up, it's like $200. But he says primal. In other words, like that's part of your primal being. That pain goes to the core. So it's like one of the deepest pains that feels threatened. And this panic usually kicks in when you fear you're going to lose your partner, or any primary attachment figure. It is a shame though, because they have all the stress hormones, and at the same time, the hormones, the cuddle hormone, oxytocin, that builds safety and trust, they have lower amounts of that. So they have the higher ones of the stress and lower ones of the opiates, the oxytocin. I mean, it's tough. A lot of these people end up on the needle, grabbing the bottle. Can you blame them? Really. It's it doesn't work great, It doesn't end you in a death or prison, so. But it's a defensive strategy, as desperate as it is, and it makes sense, to me at least. Now, the problem with the fearful void and the anxious when they're very, is that can become so consuming that you're unable to imagine the world through your partner's eyes. You can't do, mentalization, as I talked about. I'll say, well, what do you think your partner was thinking? I'm like, no idea. How do you think your partner would react if you said X, Y, and Z? How would I know? I have no idea how they react. How are you supposed to have a relationship with that? It's just impossible. But besides that, they have trouble feeling empathy and supportive of the other person, truly supportive. Like an avoidant will block their emotional reactions, including that primal panic. Like an avoidant to dismissive avoidant, like, no, I never felt that. Trust me, you start waking up. That's when those feelings could come. And if you're in a relationship with an avoidant, think twice of getting close, because as you get close, more and more, not just is he going to accept your love, and open my heart, so he's going to have to open his heart and feel that primal panic. Like the whole world's alive with danger and threat, reality itself. his heart's going to be pretty closed. It's going to be hard to open up. It's got to be something damn special for him to open it up and go through that. And it's, you know, the avoidant really does have that kind of under simmering anger, but they're so emotionless. You know, they'll be like, yeah, you know, my girlfriend's a huge bitch. And it's like, you sound a little angry. No. And actually, he really wouldn't sound angry, or she. It would really just be completely, but if you pay attention, as I do, you can tell his heart's beating because his breath, so he's having the reaction. He doesn't feel it, though. Like, he'll deny it. He'll be like, no, I'm not angry at all. You know, and he'll have that front. But if you hooked him up, you'd be able to see that his heart was beating, his blood pressure was up, even if he's not aware of it. Okay, so I'll go over in the next videos, but the big thing is how do you fix it, you know? And so Leslie Becker-Phelps, in her book Insecure in Love, says that you need to begin by developing a relationship with at least one emotionally available attachment figure. A partner is the best. If not, a family member, a friend, clergyman, therapist, even God. And she says, as you practice with that, the more you experience feeling accepted and protected, the more you'll believe that you're worthy of love. The more that you'll believe that you're capable of soothing others and getting soothed by them. Earned security that true love and comfort is available to you. You do that, you get earned security, right? So that's her first part. Her second part is to directly nurture a part of yourself that makes you more aware of your experiences and to respond to those experiences in a more accepting and compassionate way. It's about your relationship to yourself. Aware, first, you're probably going to have to be embodied, get aware of these emotions, and then having a certain attitude towards them, like really compassionate. You know, compassion, yeah. In this way, you can feel the support even when you're alone, because your mental representations of attachment figures are internally lodged, and they're available to you. That feeling, those emotions that feeling of safety, that feeling of comfort, those emotions are inside, and you can call them up once you have that inner relationship. So you have to change the internal environment. Anyway, so next I'll talk about how to be worthy of love, how to feel. You know, there's an art to being worthy of love. And I'll just go over it quickly and give a meditation on that. So this is part one, but I appreciate you guys sticking there with me.